desolate, cold, and beautiful. This is Antarctica.
The Southern Ocean is a globally important ocean, but it's also been the site of multiple waves of exploitation. First, humans sealed for fur, and then we whaled for oil, and now we're here with the krill fishery. In the span of almost 70 years, we've removed almost 99% of fin and blue whales and about 80 or 90% of humpback whales in the region. Whaling in particular really decimated the ecosystem. When we removed the whales, we removed the iron, krill populations declined, and then the whole ecosystem became a lot less productive. My name's Meher. I am a marine ecologist and an environmental justice advocate, and I am with Sea Shepherd this year as a guest scientist aboard their Antarctica defense campaign.
I'm Carmela Ray. I am a marine ecologist and a guest scientist on board the Alec.
I think that there was a part of me that when I saw some of the imagery that Sea Shepherd had shared before, I didn't want it to be as true as it was. One of the questions that we were asking as scientists on this ship is, how often is this happening? To see whales almost every time we see a fishing vessel in really close proximity was pretty scary. I didn't want it to be true, but it is.
Antarctica is important to the world because it serves a lot of our oceans, and what happens here can affect what happens around the world, and we see that through carbon sink and iron and the whales that come here and the krill that are here as well.
Krill are really important to the ecosystem, not just because they are a food source for so many other things in this system, but also because as individual organisms, when they drop to the bottom of the ocean, they're actually sequestering carbon there for a really long time. And that's huge because the biomass of krill is probably the biggest biomass of any animal or any species we have on the planet today. In the Southern Ocean, everything eats krill, or everything eats something that eats krill. The Southern Ocean, while it is really nutrient rich, it is deficient in iron. So you can think of the Southern Ocean as a little bit anemic. And what we learned when we removed whales from the ecosystem is that while you'd expect their prey to explode in population, krill populations actually declined. And the reason that that was happening is because whale poop happens to be very, very high in iron. And so when we removed the whales, we were removing the iron source for this ecosystem, and then krill populations also suffered as a result of that. The takeaway from this is not just that whales are dependent on krill, but that krill are dependent on whales too. By the 1970s, we had like a full-scale multi-vessel, multi-nation krill fishing operation in the Southern Ocean. And it used to be the case that we had quotas that were for the entirety of the Southern Ocean, but within just a few decades, we started to see that the krill fishery was actually not fishing in the entirety of the Southern Ocean, but actually just in 2 or 3 little areas, including around Coronation Island and around the Western Antarctic Peninsula. The issue with fishing in really local areas is that you're not giving these animals, whales or krill, really any time to recover, and they're really long-lived species.
Whales in Antarctica are not at their pre-whaling levels, meaning historic whaling wiped out so many whales, and we're still seeing this recovery. With less krill in the area, it could cause competition between the whales, which we don't want to see yet because they're not recovered.
Also, if you're fishing in hyperlocal areas, if that area is an important feeding ground for whales that are recovering, or it's an important spawning ground for krill, then you are disproportionately influencing their life histories and their recovery too.
We are seeing so many whales here in the Antarctic waters, between the peninsula and specifically in Coronation, so much so that it's an overwhelming amount.
I've never in my life seen this many whales, and it's crazy to see those quantities of whales knowing what we just did to these whales a few decades ago. These regions, like around Coronation Island, are clearly really important feeding grounds for some of these animals. So if we are fishing krill here, we're fishing in a place where whales are also trying to feed. And this is really important because whales don't feed year-round. They feed in this season, and then they're feeding for the year. It is really important that we give them the space to do that.
Marine Protected Areas, or MPAs, is of interest to the science team here. We want to see an MPA, specifically in Coronation Island and around parts of the peninsula, meaning no krill fishing being allowed to happen in these areas. And just the scale of whales that we're seeing, I mean, there are marine protected areas that happen for less. Where else in the world would an MPA make sense than right here in Antarctica? Working with Sea Shepherd and the science on board is a really amazing collaboration. Having the combination of Sea Shepherd bringing the activism and the support base that cares, and and science going in to look for the data that can make change is a really wonderful way that we can think about science in the future.
To go from not even knowing as a scientist the extent to which whales were overlapping with the krill fishery in the system and just seeing photos and imagery, and then to being here and witnessing it myself, I think this campaign has been incredibly successful, especially from a science perspective, because not only have we collected a lot of data to this effect, but we've also demonstrated the ways in which science and advocacy can work together and the reasons that we make each other stronger.